This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's community access radio station Plains FM 96.9 and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
Good morning, Bliss lovers. It is Rebecca Davison here. How are you? Intuitive coach and mentor, founder of the Intuitive Life Academy. And on the Find Your Bliss radio show, we talk all about things metaphysical, esoteric, intuitive, psychic, and spiritual. So today on the Find Your Bliss radio show, I'm talking to an important topic in terms of your personal relationships, and that is transcending attachment. And why would we even want to do that? So first and foremost, we have to really look at what attachment is. And as with everything, there's a pro and a con. So, and this is in particular to romantic relationships. So I want you to kind of have that context in your mind, because you know, your romantic relationships are the most personal, are the most intimate, and also, too, they are a great training ground for spiritual development, because it's really about us being seen at our deepest levels and also allowing, you know, intimacy, as they say, is into me see. And often, too, we can have a lot of fear around that because we have a lot of self-judgment. You know, what's that book? You know, if I show you who I really am, and what if you don't like me? So there can be a greater level of risk and also fear in our personal relationships, and a greater a greater risk, I guess, of, if we're not aware, doing some damage. So that's why we want to educate ourselves and go, okay, what do I need to be aware of to be able to move into an intimate relationship successfully and to navigate my way through it at any given moment? Because we really want to live by that creed in our intimate relationships, which is take no crap, but do no harm. You know, that's a very good sweet spot to be in. You don't want to intentionally, if you can avoid it at all costs, hurt other people, but at the same time, you want to be aware of your own boundary. So, transcending attachment, and there's lots of different ways to look at this. So I want to start kind of using a physical experience and example, which is an attachment can definitely be very physical, because of course, why do we become attached? And really this, you know, the biggest attachment that we have on the physical level is for the purpose of procreation. Excuse me. So obviously when, and you think about it, biologically, men and women are built differently. Women, of course, they have one precious egg, they ovulate once a month. So when it comes to terms of procreation, we need to bond and attach to our partner for survival of the species. You know, a woman wants, and you can, if you do any work in regards to research around sexual attraction, you'll understand there's so many different levels to this, you know, like the proportion between a woman's bust and her hip ratio, you know, the size of her waist. You know, these are all subtle clues on a subconscious level that indicate to a man that a woman is healthy to bear children. You know, there's, if you start doing some research on it, it's fascinating in regards to how the human species are attracted to each other. So, on a physical level, in terms of procreation, attachment is really important. A woman needs to find a partner that she can create that bonding with, because as having a child is a vulnerable time, you know, she needs support, she needs food, she needs shelter. So if we're looking at on a primal level, attachment is really important in terms of procreation. And of course, to be able to have her partner attached for at least that period of time that she has the baby, right? That she grows the baby, she gives birth to the baby, she nurtures the baby goes on and becomes an adult. So success, you know, the process has occurred and it's successful. But of course what happens is a key component of that is emotional attachment. And this is where we're going to place our focus today and how this can play out. And the emotional attachment, of course, for a woman who's pregnant, the emotional attachment will be part of her guidance system too, to let her know that she is safe. But of course, with all things, we need to make sure that we are approaching this from a healthy balance, because the positive side of attachment is, yes, I can attach to this partner, I can achieve this end goal, especially in a physical sense, it may be procreation. On an emotional level, it might just be beyond having children. It might just be to know that you're safe with this person, that you can open up to them, that it is safe to reveal your true self to them. And we become bonded in that respect. They become your person as such. However, attachment can cross over into a bit of a line which we might call even neediness, or having, and this is where we start to maybe go into, are we having expectations around how that person is showing up? Are we putting parameters in place to say, you need to do this in order for me to be happy? And this is where we have to take a really close look and be discerning, because it's up to us to create our own happiness. So if we're having an experience where we are expecting something from somebody else, right? We're expecting the validation, the compliments, the support for that person to behave in a particular way in order for us to be okay. That can be a really important place for us to start looking and asking ourselves some questions. Are we expecting them to do something for us that we're not doing for ourselves? And this is why it's so important for us to really have a great intimate relationship with anybody. We want to be having a great intimate relationship with ourselves. So when attachment probably shows up the most, I mean, it's natural when you meet somebody and you're starting to date them, that you spend a lot of time together, you become bonded, you're sharing similar values, similar attitudes perhaps, you're interested in each other, and then the attachment piece probably really comes a little bit further on when the relationship's established. But then there becomes energetic pulls and often a lot of communication that is unspoken in terms of attachment. Say, for example, you want to go out for dinner and your partner has something on, and there's an unspoken expectation that your partner will make you a priority. That can be something that needs to be looked at and checked. And maybe you might think, oh, that's a one-off example and that's not a big deal in the moment. But over time, those expectations of attachment and priority can actually negatively impact your relationship, because it's not actually being spoken about what the root cause is. You're not actually having the courage to go to the deepest parts of the relationship and say, actually, when you spend time with your friends, I have a fear that you're interested in spending time with other people rather than me. Excuse me. And again, understanding what it takes to have deeper levels of awareness so we can really speak to the truth of the matter. And I want you to look at it this way. For example, if your partner goes out for, like a boys' night or something like that, and you're feeling a little bit threatened by that, it's very much a headspace game. What are you telling yourself in regards to what's going to happen there? And this is how trust can get broken down in relationships. Expecting that person to kind of choose you over their friends, becomes an expectation of attachment. I'm a priority to you in your life and world, and I want you to show me. I want you to prove that to me. But what you're doing in a way is you're cutting back that person's freedom. And you're not being honest, because what you want to really do is actually go into the space and energy of, why do I feel this way? Why is it that I feel perhaps a little threatened by the fact that he's going out on a boys' night? Because your mind can make up a story, and often too, this is a scenario that's probably quite common, where women especially go into, if you don't have a good self-esteem and self-worth, and you start using your imagination, you can go into a scenario which is not even true, but what happens is you end up creating it. Because if you go into an energy of not trusting your partner, and then of course what happens, they pick up on that energetically, it creates dissonance, there becomes conflict, that, then you go out and you have that experience of kind of being with your friends. The other person feels wounded because people aren't being really honest about what's going on for them. So we need to learn what it takes to communicate at a deeper level and say, I actually feel kind of threatened by what you're choosing to do. And again, this is where it gets even more trickier, because is it your partner's responsibility, your self-worth? No, right? Your partner's not responsible for your self-worth. You are. And my definition of self-worth, I've done a whole bunch of videos on it in my Intuitive Life Academy Facebook group. So if you wanted to check it out, you're welcome to go and have a look in there. It's a whole series. I think it's under the announcements, all the videos. I've got some of them on YouTube as well. But self-worth really is the quality of the relationship that you're having with yourself. And when we are expecting our partner to behave in a certain way to boost our self-worth, over time, that is going to pull on the energy of the relationship. Your partner's going to get resentful. If you're doing it for your partner, you're going to get resentful because you want them ultimately to work on themselves. They want you ultimately to work on yourself. And again, it always comes back to self-responsibility and accountability. So that's why we have to do the harder work, because it's easy when you're in a relationship, right, to blame the other person. And sometimes it can be confusing. What's mine and what's the other person's? Because when you think about relationships, they are created within your own mind, right? You are perceiving the relationship. You are the one who is determining that you like that person. Your filter is looking at that person in such a way that you see the best of them, or you see what you want to see, so you fall in love with them. And it is a chemical reaction. We know this. There's dopamine, there's serotonin, there's lots of other drugs that are popping around in your brain and your circuitry when you do fall in love with somebody. And to be aware of that in a way is impacting your view of reality and how you're interpreting that other person. That's one thing. And that can be really quite full on, right? Because when you're starting to work with chemicals in your body, it takes it to a whole other level. You know, like they literally say that your brain lights up like it's on cocaine when you fall in love with somebody, because all the receptors, right, are getting that buzz. They're getting the hit of the energy. And again, it is a chemical process. So that's something else that we need to take into consideration when we do fall in love with somebody. That's going to affect our filter on a physical level, and to have that awareness. So in terms of attachment, when you're in this space where you're having these expectations about how the other person should show up, and again, this often shows up after a period of time. So after you've gotten familiar with each other, after you've maybe made that commitment to each other, and then it is, how do we navigate this relationship in such a way that it feels fluid, as opposed to pulling on each other's energy. And this is really, really important. If you want to have a good quality relationship, you will do the work of asking yourself these kind of questions. And it amazes me that people take this for granted in relationships. They don't ask these kind of questions. They don't actually go, hey, are you enjoying our relationship? Is there something that you would like to do different? You know, and again, if you are doing that, kudos to you, that you start having a weekly meeting to go, you know what, just like I would have a sales meeting at work to make sure that we're meeting our targets, I would do that for my relationship to make sure that my partner's happy, so we can air any grievances at this particular meeting, and that we can actually say to ourselves, how do you think we're doing? You know, how do you feel about our sex life? How do you feel about how we're doing money? How do you feel in regards to our purpose, in regards to co-creation? To start really taking your relationship to the next level in terms of communication, and start being very aware of the energetic shifts and movement in your relationship. Because often what happens, right, is we're communicating, we're talking with words, but the energy is doing something completely different. Right? You know how you can say to somebody, how are you? And they say, I'm fine. And you can literally tell that they're not fine. This happens in relationships a lot. And we need to develop the courage and the courtesy, really, to say, hey, I can energetically feel that you're not fine. Would you like to talk about that? Because it's always a choice. Maybe somebody doesn't want to. But then it becomes a circumstance of like, okay, if you don't want to talk about it, then I'm not going to pick that energy up for you. That's your choice. So you get to stay in your own energetic field. I'm not going to pick this energy of sadness, depression, conflict, whatever it is up if you're not prepared to talk about it. You know, like you have to be very aware of leaving the energy in the right place in your personal relationship and what you're responsible for. And I see this all the time, and often this is what happens when people work with me. We have to clear the energy of where they're holding energy, vibration for other people, especially in your personal relationships. Why? Because you're going to be hanging out with that person the most. So that's the person whose energy that you're going to be exposed to the most. And if you're not aware of your own energetic boundaries, then you're probably doing it without even thinking about it, because on some level you believe that that's caring. And this can go back to those childhood patterns, right? Hi, Michelle. How are you, lovely? Nice to have you here. So we're talking about, and of course, attachment starts from your childhood relationships. So let's look at it, and as we just park that for a second, but let's look at your childhood relationship with your parents and how you attached to them. Now, and also too, the other thing that we need to look at here is trauma. And everybody experiences trauma, but everybody experiences it in a different way because we're all wired differently. So first and foremost, right, give yourself a break and realize, yes, if you're an adult, on some level you would have experienced some kind of trauma, whether that's some form of rejection, some form of loss, some form of grief, some form of heartbreak. Everybody experiences events that are traumatic. Some of them are universal, like, you know, on some level for a lot of people, COVID could have been traumatic. You know, if you live in Christchurch, you've been through a lot of earthquakes. That's been traumatic. There are lots of different ways that people experience trauma. From my experience as well, I've seen some really interesting things, because pretty much, you know, every client who I see has some level of trauma. Some people can process it really well and other people struggle. And often, again, this comes back to their personal reality. And this will make sense in a minute in regards to attachment, because when we're young, right, we come into the planet, we're a spiritual being having a human experience, come into a body at some level relatively quickly before the age of 3, right, you are going to experience some form of perceived rejection or abandonment, right? Maybe you're lying in your cot and mum doesn't come when you're crying. On some level, you are going to feel that in your body and in your reality. Now, what you make that mean is a whole other thing, in terms of if you know that you are loved beyond that you're in a supportive environment, the energy generally feels safe, then you're probably going to be able to process that kind of trauma in a way that is, you know, it feels okay. Maybe to your interpretation. Other people, if they don't have an environment that feels safe and they experience some kind of rejection, perhaps it's going to feel less safe. And the thing is as well, this is very difficult to measure because, of course, people have their own personal resilience as well. So I've seen before where people have been in incredibly traumatic environments, but they are super strong, resilient. I've seen it before where people have experienced trauma which would be minimal and they have you know, it's been a huge thing for them. So it's not, there's no measure, there's no rule of thumb. It's completely individual to the person. And that, you know, that's not right or wrong. It doesn't mean that somebody who's experienced a minimal trauma and, you know, has had a bad reaction to it is over dramatic. It just means that that's their way of interpreting the trauma. So again, coming back to the rejection and abandonment, especially as a child, that plays out further on down the track in terms of our relationship. So how you process and assimilate that first rejection in particular. Maybe it was from a childhood friend. Maybe it was from a perception that a parent wasn't there for you when you really needed them. Maybe it was because mum or dad left home. You know, I've seen it before where people, you know, their parents have gone on a 3-month holiday, or their parents have immigrated to another country and then they've gone afterwards. It is our perceived perception of how that has occurred and how we have interpreted that and tucked it into our subconscious, which shows up later on in our relationships. Because, of course, you think about it, the attachment, the opposite of that is pretty much rejection, often on the dark side of attachment. Why do we want to attach? Because we have fear of rejection. We have fear of loss of love. There's some part of our circuitry that's going, oh my goodness, I need to hold on to this at all costs. Or otherwise, what does that mean about me? Am I unlovable? So coming back to your childhood interpretation of rejection and abandonment will definitely have an imprint on how you attach to other people and what your expectations are and how you want them to treat you so you get to feel safe and get to feel like you're not going to be rejected or abandoned. I hope this is making sense in terms of why we want to look at our childhood energy in terms of how it shows up as an adult. Essentially, between the ages of 0 to about 7, 8, you're in a theta brain state. So you're like a little sponge, right? You're absorbing everything from your environment. If your environment feels good, it feels safe, it feels expanded, again, you've probably got a better chance of being able to process rejection or abandonment in a way that is less impacting than perhaps somebody who has an environment where it doesn't feel safe, where maybe there's a lot of conflict, where maybe there's a lot of trauma, where maybe the parents are experiencing a lot of trauma themselves. But being aware of that makes you a better partner in the here and now when you can show up and go, whoa, I'm having a really strong reaction because that person's choosing to go do something else, right? And it's bringing up my rejection and abandonment issues. I'm wanting to attach so I can feel safe. And recognizing that this is a very subconscious process. You're not necessarily doing it from your rational mind, you're doing it from a much deeper primal force. And let's talk about primal fear as well. If you've ever been in a circumstance where you've had a primal fear activated, which can be, again, loss of love, loss of shelter, like losing your home. If you've ever been in that circumstance, then you're going to know the level of contraction that can occur and how it can disrupt us on the deepest possible, even physical level. So there's different levels too. I remember having a circumstance once which was so bizarre. I actually had a conflict with a girlfriend in regards to an ex-boyfriend, and it was really primal. I was like, wow, where is this energy coming from? Excuse me. Where is this energy coming from in terms of why do I feel so strongly about this? And then even having the ability to assess it within myself and go, wow, that is a primal fear. And again, it was connected to some past life energy where this ex-boyfriend was actually my child in a past life. So again, which comes back to those energies of how a mother can literally lift up a car off a baby. That is primal instinct. There is something that's going through her circuitry that is like, I have to protect this child at all costs. This is my offspring. To pick this car up off my child is easy because, there's so much energy and so much primal instinct in the ability to be able to do that. So we have to really be aware of how multidimensional we are and really start to ask ourselves some harder questions when it comes to attachment. Having the ability to even initiate the conversation and even ask your partner, do you feel like you experience the amount of freedom that you would like in this relationship? Now, a lot of people are like, ooh, what does that mean? Does that mean we're going to go into an open relationship? I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about spaciousness in your relationship, where that person gets to feel like they can be the brightest, best version of themselves, which is why we often fall in love anyway, because we meet somebody and they make you feel like a better person. They make you feel like your potential is coming forth, right? We often hear that language, she makes me want to be a better man, or he makes me, he lights me up. Right, that is what we're looking for because, again, in a way, we're seeing our own potential being reflected through the other person. And we can, of course, want to be attached to that. But when it comes to, let's look at the flip side of that. What does non-attachment look like spaciousness. Non-attachment means that I'm not going to stop you from being your true self. And this is where it can get really kind of grindy for a lot of people, because maybe that means in some circumstances that person will choose to do something that is beyond your relationship. For example, maybe your partner gets offered a job in a different country, and for them to follow the highest version of themselves means actually going. Right, and then you're in a circumstance where you're experiencing rejection and abandonment because you're like, if you'd loved me, you'd stay. Okay, and recognizing, excuse me, sorry folks, I had a milky coffee, and I'm not so great with milk, so clearing that out of my throat chakra, right? What happens to you and your interpretation of that? Because it's a conflict, right? Because there can be part of you that's going, this is awesome for my partner to be able to have this experience, but there's another part of you that might be feeling, if you loved me, you'd stay. And you want to ask yourself that consistently. Are we experiencing freedom in this relationship? How can I contribute to the other person experiencing more freedom in the relationship? My gist on relationships, especially personal relationships, is they are there for your personal growth and spiritual growth, right? That is why you come together in forms of relationship. So if you can even have that perspective about the relationship that you might be in right now, or the relationship that you would like to have, that two people coming together to support each other in their spiritual growth, how would you approach the relationship differently? Very different from perhaps even the basic needs of food, shelter, warmth, survival. You're moving into a much higher paradigm in regards to, and even looking at that, like the 6 needs, right? Certainty, uncertainty, love and connection, significance, growth and contribution. Those are more spiritual in terms of needs. So, but that's how I would encourage you to approach your intimate relationships. How can I contribute to the other person's growth? How can I contribute to the other person's growth in terms of their spiritual development, in terms of their personal development? Now, that's a very different approach, because a lot of people go into relationships from different levels of awareness. And if you don't have a huge level of awareness, you might be thinking that you're going into a relationship, yes, to give, but also to be loved. What does it take to go into a relationship and be the person who loves themselves so much that it's just the joy of offering that energy to the other person, right? As opposed to needing anything from them, like needing their validation. I've seen it before where people go into relationships for money, right? Heaven forbid, because then it becomes a commodity exchange. I'll give you this for this. That's not great energy in terms of growth and contribution, and again, if we're looking at archetypes, you could say that's often the prostitute archetype, right? Commodity exchange. I'll give you my body if you give me money. And again, we want to have awareness around stuff like this, because when we have awareness, we can experience more freedom. When we have more freedom, we can actually go into, and again, people might be going, what's she talking about? The archetypes are essentially collective consciousness patterns, symbols, imprints of energy. For example, archetypes would be hero, warrior, magician. You see a lot of it in the tarot cards, right? The devil, the tower, etc. So again, they're collective consciousness energies and ways of being that we can kind of adhere to, and they all have light and dark. And again, on the light side, the prostitute archetype means that your survival needs are going to get met. On the darker side, of course, there's the emotional component perhaps of maybe shame and guilt. So, and again, the commodity exchange. So remembering, of course, too, that when it comes to transcending attachment, we need to know what attachment is, and then we need to know what non-attachment or detachment looks like. And detachment is really interesting because there's kind of 2 levels. Detachment, depending on your level of awareness and consciousness, you can look at detachment and go, it's just about, letting go, or, not being attached, but the irony is really, to be detached, you have to have a much greater level of awareness and do the work to be detached, right? And that takes more effort, because what you'll find is if you just say to your mind, because this is how the ego blocks us in our relationships all the time, right? The ego's like, yeah, I've got that, I'm good. And then I've got the information. And then you go out thinking, I can take that information and use it, or have the benefit of that knowledge. And then, of course, what happens is you're in a circumstance where it doesn't work, right? Because you haven't embodied it. And often too with detachment, you need to go and do the shadow work to really experience detachment. And the shadow work is looking at ourselves, is looking within ourselves and going, okay, well, where am I attaching? Where do I have expectations of other people? And this happens a lot, right? Like as a brother or a sister or a mother or a child or a daughter or an auntie or an uncle, we have expectations of each other all the time. This is how an uncle's supposed to show up. This is how a mother's supposed to show up. This is how a child is supposed to behave. And then you have all the other things around that, like your family and your culture and how you see yourself in the collective consciousness. Excuse me. Excuse me. So yeah. And then starting to look, oh goodness, excuse me, I'm just going to clear a bit of energy out of my throat there. Got all excited about talking about this topic, and yeah, just need to open up my throat. So we're talking about attachment and how this expectation shows up in terms of identities as well, and even how you see yourself as a partner. So, because that's going to have an impact on how you show up in your relationships. What is your expectation of how the way somebody behaves? And again, this can get distorted. If you've experienced trauma in the past, say you've been in an abusive relationship, that's going to have an imprint on your filter in regards to being able to create a relationship that is beyond that. And that's why we need to do the work, right? We need to do the work of going, how did I end up in an abusive relationship anyway? What did I believe about myself that actually contributed to me manifesting this? And what is it that the universe is trying to show me in terms of being in that relationship about myself? Because the universe is always bringing you information, often through your emotional body. And how does that look? Through the emotional body, it looks like contracted emotion. So not feeling great. You know, so if you're not feeling great and you're running a certain level of energy, and then you're actually attracting a situation which contributes to you not feeling great, you have a very definitive, clear answer of how the law of attraction works, and also the law of cause and effect. If you're not feeling great, you're running that vibration out into the universe. And again, this is not about blame, because the ego and the mind like to go, oh my goodness, I'm creating my own demise. You could look at it that way, but you'd probably prefer not to, because you don't want to beat yourself up. You want to go into awareness and go, if I have control over, that's how it's working, because the universe is impartial. The universe is not sitting there judging you and making you wrong. You do that all by yourself. You want to be in that space of actually going, if I have the ability, because I've been in this vibration and therefore I've created this situation, whatever you are experiencing in your life is your creation, then realize that you have the ability to shift the whole thing to a higher vibration and create a different vibration, right? You're a limitless being in a body. You have the law of perpetual transmutation of energy available at your disposal at any time, which means that you can't destroy energy, but you can shift it to a higher vibration. You can't change what's happened in the past, but you can change the way that you feel about it. And this is why we also want to look at this so deeply in terms of our relationships and how we're expecting other people to show up in a particular way. Really great question to ask yourself. Am I expecting my partner to do something for me that I'm not prepared to do myself? Right? Am I expecting my partner to behave in a particular way? Excuse me. And I'm not offering that to myself. So it's a really great rule of thumb in terms of, oh my goodness. Excuse me, folks. I don't know what's going on with my throat today. just asking for that energy to be released. And also too, sometimes, right, is, especially when you're broadcasting on Facebook Live, it can be really interesting because sometimes people don't want to hear what you have to say. So clearing and transmuting any of that, anywhere there's any resistance in regards to hearing this information, because I think one of the hardest things to learn about being a human is that you are the creator of your reality. You are the one who is perceiving your reality and you are the one who is creating it. And we need to take responsibility for that. We need to do the work instead of, if you're ever going into blame of your partner or other people, you really want to check yourself, right? Why are you blaming them? Because you have power in regards to how you choose to respond. So if you're going into blame or judgment or, even today, right, when I was driving into town and it's rainy and people were driving in kind of a funny way and I was kind of getting a bit grumpy. And again, I always laugh at myself when I get grumpy with other people because it's like you're just getting annoyed with yourself through other people. That's it. That's the level of responsibility that you want to be taking. You don't want to go into separation. There is no separation. All the people that you see are an extension of yourself. You want to love them and bless them and see them part of pure source creation. It is part of your creation. You have created that. You are the universe. So when you get annoyed with other people, you're essentially just getting annoyed with yourself. But this is the thing about intimate relationships. That's why they can be such an amazing mirror. And if we're experiencing attachment in those relationships, we really want to check ourselves and go, what's going on with me that I feel like this person needs to provide me with something that I'm not prepared to provide myself? Whether it's safety, compliments, support, nurturing. Why am I expecting them to do it and not actually doing it for myself? I'm going to say goodbye to Facebook now. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Hey, Claire, Michelle, lovely to have you, ladies. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now. Okay, so just finishing up on the Facebook Live there, we're talking about transcending attachment and why it's so important in terms of your personal relationships and what it means to really step into that space where you can own your ability to create what it is that you want by bringing the responsibility back to yourself. Right? You can own your ability to create what it is that you want by bringing the responsibility back to yourself. And what does that look like? That looks like asking yourself, am I being needy in this relationship? Am I expecting something from this person that I'm not giving myself? Am I expecting them to meet my needs on a certain level, but I'm not doing that for myself? Because people often get confused with this, right? They kind of go, well, of course that person should meet my needs. Yes, to an extent in terms of helping you to feel safe and comfortable and providing a safe space. And this is where people get into all sorts of trouble, right? Like people will have a circumstance in a relationship where a partner will actually be really disrespectful. And instead of calling their partner on it and saying, hey, this is my interpretation of what's just happened here and this is how I feel about it and there's no way that I would ever do that to you, they don't say anything, right? The energy is there and it gets sucked up and then people don't address it and then it becomes a real big thing. It becomes like that lump in the carpet that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and eventually you can't even walk around your living room because the lump is so big. Right? So we really want to go, okay, again, when it comes to detachment, let's talk about that for a minute. Being detached means that you can be the observer of yourself. You can detach from the fact, actually, you can observe your own emotional reaction. And when you can do that, you can actually have a little bit of space in terms of how you choose to respond. Now, don't get me wrong, folks, this is a practice. This is a practice. Whenever you go into blame, expectation, demanding something from your partner, you are out of alignment because you are the source. This is why we have to do the work of loving ourselves so much. And you think about it. Relationships are great when relationships are great. But when relationships, when some darker energy comes up, when some fear, some pain, some doubt from the past come up, that's when we are doing our true spiritual work. That's when we move into that space of going, this is where I'm really going to grow through contrast, through that space of going, wow, there's conflict here. There's contrast here. How am I going to handle it? How am I going to choose to respond? What is the most loving choice in this moment? Because sometimes the loving choice is not about the other person. It's about you, choosing what's loving for you, but also knowing how to communicate intense feelings and emotions in a way that is self-actualizing. Now, what do I mean by that? Self-actualizing meaning living to your true potential, and doing that in such a way that means that we're aware of our own feelings. We can honor our own feelings, but we are choosing how we are responding. We're doing it from a place of awareness rather than a default position. And this is never more so true than when it comes to relationships and experiencing detachment. Like a really detached response, really, if you're in conflict, would be to be able to observe yourself and your responses and then choose from there, is that in the way I'm feeling at the moment, is it even appropriate to respond from the way that I'm feeling? Do I actually need to ask for some time? Do I need to say, hey, this is a really intense experience for me right now, so I'm going to need a little bit of time to step back and be able to respond to this from a place that is more rational, rather than just getting caught up in the emotion and then responding emotionally, and again, getting attached through negative energy. Because often what happens, right, with couples, when they come and see me, you can see that they have gotten negatively attached to each other and they're kind of emotionally manipulating each other. So they've got all these cords of attachment wrapped around each other because they aren't choosing to communicate on a deeper level. They're not willing to, they're having an agreement to have a limited version of communication. And it takes courage to really, and knowing yourself, to be able to have a superior level of conversation, to be able to have a more enlightened level of conversation. Like, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment means being free of suffering. So when you can actually do the inner shadow work, which of course is what I help people with in my coaching practice, look at yourself, love all the pain that you have inside, love all your hurt, love all your woundedness, bring light to your trauma, transcend that, then you can experience detachment because you've done the inner work. That means if somebody says something to you that's often triggered you in the past, you don't get triggered anymore because the energy has shifted. So this is really where detachment is so beautiful, because you can be the observer of your own experience rather than being in it and just reacting. You can choose to respond from a much higher level of awareness. And again, the gift of detachment means that if somebody chooses to leave the relationship, that you're okay with that. Because love doesn't leave you, because love is who you are. So there is no sense of loss, which has been one thing that has totally amazed me about losing my dad, is that I can still feel his love everywhere. I've lost his physicality, but his love is still there, which is, incredible and amazing and beautiful and delightful and wondrous, because love never dies. So again, and these are energetic frequencies that we can tune into. So it gives you a whole different perspective in regards to relationships. That, there's a loss of physicality perhaps if somebody moves out of a relationship, but these relationships are part of your spiritual growth. And for us to really experience more spaciousness and more freedom in relationships, we want to practice detachment. We want to be the observer of our own emotions. We want to create that space where we can truly see how we are responding and then make an inspired choice in regards to that. And again, it's a practice. Why? Because it's not always that easy, right? If you've been really triggered, if you're having a really intense emotion, you're going to do the best you can. However, if you learn and understand these concepts and you can start applying it in those moments, asking for time, asking for space, taking a few moments, practicing this, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And then eventually you'll get to a place where you can observe yourself and you can remain calm because you can see the truth of what is occurring. And you think about it, if you're having a really intense, charged conversation, right, it's usually because there is some woundedness there. Some woundedness from your past in relationship to attachment, rejection, abandonment. And again, because we're all doing this, and if you want to see two adults behave like children really quickly, you just press their buttons about rejection and abandonment. If they haven't done the inner work to address it, to resolve it, to heal it, it's just like watching a fireworks show. It's instantaneous, immediate. You can see two adults become like children instantaneously because they've rubbed up against each other's wounds. And we all have them, and we all need to take responsibility for them, and we all need to look at them. We need to be the people who are prepared to do the work of looking at ourselves. And, when we do that, our interface between ourselves and other people becomes stronger. And that's really important in regards to creating a good relationship, which kind of feels a little bit counterintuitive, right? That we're wanting to love everybody and everything, but we still need to learn what it takes to maintain a good energetic boundary. Being an intuitive, a big part of the work is understanding your own energy. Your energy field, what you're holding in your energy field. If you're carrying energy for other people, how to let it go, how to identify if you're carrying energy for other people, how to identify what your energy really feels like, so therefore you can maintain a boundary. What to do if somebody does smash a boundary, and how to do it in such a way that is still kind and loving. I see that a lot when people are starting to learn about boundaries. They get concerned and worried because they're like, oh, I feel like I'm being mean, because they're doing something different. They're creating an energy that says, this is mine and that's yours. And I'm not going to pick up your feelings, your vibrations, your beliefs, your behaviors, especially when you're not holding your own energy. And that's the ultimate, right? To have a relationship with somebody who also takes responsibility for their own emotions, is aware of their own boundaries, and that they can say, hold on a second, we're getting a bit blurred. Our interface is getting blurry. This is mine and that's yours. This is, and again, can go on indefinitely, but in terms of your filter and your perception, but things can shift and transcend to a much higher level really quickly if you're prepared to take ownership of what is yours. And this is where relationships often break down, because one or both parties are not taking responsibility for their own wounding. Right? If you want to smash a relationship or be miserable, this is a great way to do it. Don't take responsibility for your own pain. Blame other people, judge other people, criticize other people. Don't look at your own stuff. That is a perfect way to create a nightmare for yourself and for the other person. Our job is to actually go, this is what is mine. This is my wounding. This is what has pained me. This is what I need to take responsibility for. And this is what I need to work on. And that is why I love energy work so much. I've been to counsellors before myself. I'd often, no offence to counsellors, but in my experience, it doesn't shift the energy. You want to transcend quickly. You want to feel relief. You want to go into a higher and lighter vibration. You'll do energy work, right? You'll do intuitive coaching. You will get to the root cause of the problem and you'll shift the pain around that. And then it's gone for good. So it completely changes the trajectory of your life. And then once you've got the tools, you can do it yourself. And often, I did a Facebook Live in the Facebook group last night about injustice, and how there's a lot of pressure on the planet at the moment in terms of awakening, right? We are shifting out of third density energy into fourth density energy, not to be confused with fifth dimensional energy. And it's really about us shifting into our heart space And the way we have to do that is to look into our heart space and see what's there, to heal any wounding so our heart can be open, so we can extend love. You know, if you've got a heart wall, you're going to feel defensive. You're going to feel like there's a block. You're going to feel like you don't trust other people. You're going to feel like the world isn't safe. Our job is to heal that so we can actually go into expansion, loving each other more, letting go of anywhere we're operating from our head and our defensiveness and separation, as opposed from our heart space and expansion and love and joy. A lot of people, folks, you can just notice this. If you want to practice your intuition, I'd encourage you to do this. Just go around and notice how many people you know who live in their head or live in their heart. You will feel the difference. Right? Are people living in their head or are they living in their heart? A lot of people often, the head does things which are really interesting, like, oh, you know, if you live in your heart space that you're wishy-washy, or you've got no brains, or you never get anything done, or you're light and fluffy. It doesn't work like that, right? You want to operate with both, but you want to have them on the same page. And to do that, you really need to, the head and the heart need to converse. They need to have conversations. They need to be open to each other. The heart wants to love. The heart is coded for love. Your mind, of course, though, depending on how where you are of your ego, it's either creating connection, which is heart-based, or separation, which is your ego. Your ego believes in separation, and your ego has really evolved from a kind of Darwinian, the survival of the fittest. Your ego is it's always interpreting things in a couple of different ways. Can I eat this? On a primal level, can I eat this? Is it a threat? Is it a friend? Or can I procreate with it? So, understanding that about yourself, that if you are going into judgment, separation, your ego is having a field day. And you need to be the one to go, actually, I can transcend that through the love of the universe. I can open up my heart. I can drop my judgment. I can heal my pain. And then I can choose to be connected. I can choose separation. I can choose to evolve. I can choose to be that light worker who steps up and actually wants the planet to heal. And I know that if I'm doing it on a day-to-day basis, that I'm actually contributing to the planet in a really massive way. I know a lot of light workers who get caught up in the fact that they feel like they're not doing enough. If you're doing it every single moment and every single day for yourself, you are the universe, so that is more than enough, right? But we need to you can see why taking personal responsibility is so important and so powerful. Like literally, it is the number one thing in terms of changing your life. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. I need to do it. I need to look at my dark side. You might need help. You might need a facilitator. I'm happy to facilitate you in regards to looking at your darkness, because I tell you what is the most glorious thing when you can look at the darkness within yourself and extend love to that. That is healing. That is how we shift the planet. We need to do it individually, one by one. We need to be the people who are prepared to look. And I know what it's like to look inside yourself and kind of feel the discomfort. But again, once you've done it and once you've gone through that process and once you've been facilitated and guided, preferably with somebody who, is happy to extend love to you and help you to feel safe during the process, the places you'll go, not just spiritually, but also emotionally and in your version of what life success looks like. There's no stopping you once you're prepared to take responsibility for yourself. And again, just going back into what that detachment feels like. How do you know how much spaciousness is around you? How much spaciousness do you have in your relationship currently? Do you feel free? Do you feel inspired? Do you feel transcended? What would it take to create that within your relationship? What would it take to let go of perhaps some expectations that you have of your partner? What would it take to continue to be curious about your partner? This is one thing that I see people do a lot, and it's a fatal mistake. You want to treat your partner like you just met them. When you first meet somebody and you're so curious about them, why? Because people change, grow, and evolve all the time. You do not want to make the fatal mistake of thinking that you know your partner. How can you know infinity stay curious. Keep on asking questions and keep on doing what it takes to do the inner work of clearing your own wounding. I've often said this before, folks, right? You can only hold space for people to the level at which you've felt your own feelings, your rage, your pain, your hurt, your distrust, your doubt, your jealousy. You can only be present to other people's emotions to the level that you have done it for yourself. So do yourself a big favor if you want to experience more intimacy in your relationships, more intimacy and spaciousness at the same time, then I'd encourage you to, go to my website, give me a call, let's connect, let's have a conversation in terms of helping you to transcend any kind of attachment so you can experience more freedom in your personal relationships. I hope you found this information helpful, folks. I'd love to hear from you. You can either go to my website or you can go to Facebook or you can email me at rebecca.davison@extra.co.nz. I love to hear from you, especially in regards to topics that you would like for the Find Your Bliss radio show. Love being here, love supporting you, love you guys. And if you don't know it, remember that you're an infinite being in a body and you're more amazing than you could possibly ever begin to imagine. I'm sending you so much love. I hope if you're in Christchurch that you're taking good care. It's a rainy day out there, so be safe on the roads. Bye for now.